Also over the weekend, man. So I always try to get the UFC fights, even when I'm working, because you can pause. I can buy it and I can pause it. Man, that UFC card this weekend, I really think it was the best as far as like totality. Every fight on the main card was just unbelievable. It was so good, and I love boxing. And I don't ever get butterflies like I do when there's a big boxing match, like Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, or now we got Errol Spence about to fight Terrence Crawford. Now, granted, I don't get butterflies like that, but UFC overall, they just hold more big events, and they got my attention more than boxing right now. But man, this weekend, I mean, if anybody watched the fights, even if you're not a fight fan, how can you not root for it? Because right off the beginning, you got this guy, Bo Nickal, who's like this NCAA wrestling legend from Penn State, still lives in Penn State, still wrestles with the guys, and he's 5-0, and all first-round finishes, and he's a wrestler. The guy he's supposed to fight backs out. They hire this new guy named Val Woodburn on literally like 4 days' notice. This guy comes in. He's going to fight Bo Nickal. And you saw it coming. It reminded me of when Mike Tyson came back and fought Peter McNeely. Like, McNeely, basically, you knew he was going to come in throwing like crazy, and Mike just had to weather the first 30 seconds. It was very similar. Like, because I don't know if you remember the Mike Tyson-Peter McNeely fight. That dude just came out, and then Mike caught him, and it was over. This was so similar. Because you knew this Val guy, he wants to make a name for himself. He's known to be a stand-up striker. He comes in just throwing haymakers. And who knew Bo Nickal hit him like, badink? Knocked him out with the one-hit quitter. I was like, yo. So the wrestler ended up knocking him out. So now the legend grows. Now the wrestler has power in his hands. So they're like, whoa. He got stand-up and he's got the wrestling game. So I'm like, that guy's unbelievable. And the next fight was Jalen Turner and Dan Hooker, both these two long dudes. And come to find out, Dan Hooker, like, broke a bone in his wrist and his jaw and just kept fighting and won the fight by decision. They were just throwing like crazy. They were bleeding, broken bones. And I was like, that went to decision, but they were throwing. UFC's like, if it goes to decision and it's two dudes wrestling, that's all right. But when they throw in like crazy and it goes to decision, it gets to a point, and I can't be the only one, when you see two guys at a high level and they're both just throwing and the crowd's going nuts, you don't want to see them get knocked out. I'm like a purist. I don't even care who I'm rooting for. It's to a point where I'm like, damn, these boys are putting on a show for the fans. One, you don't want the fight to end. And two, you don't want either of them to lose. So you're just like, you're so invested, and I'm like, I don't want either of them to get knocked out. I just want them to keep blooding each other up, taking these punches and finishing the fight. That fight was great. The next fight comes up. It's Robert Whittaker and Dricus du Plessis, South African dude. White South African dude. I'm going to get to that in a minute, why it's important. And then Robert Whittaker's never lost in 10 years other than to Israel Adesanya, who I think pound for pound is one of the best. So does everybody else. And this du Plessis just annihilates Robert Whittaker, knocks him out in 2 rounds. I'm like, okay, this guy's a real deal. He's been downplayed so much, and now he's going to fight Israel next for the title. And then you got the next fight, though. Oh, my gosh. Brandon Moreno and Alexander, I don't want to mispronounce his name, Pentoja. Oh, God, these all respect to Bruce Buffer. He gets these names right, and I'd be looking, I'm like, okay. Alexandra Pentoja. Again, these two little dudes, I think they weigh like 125 pounds, just throwing like crazy. And then I'm rooting for Brandon Moreno because he's such a nice guy in all his interviews. But then afterwards, this Alexandre Pontejo, they're going to kill me for mispronouncing his name. I swear to God, I feel awful. And they don't tell me. He goes, this fight is for my mother. She raised me and my brothers by herself. And then he goes, how you like me? He's not how you like me now, but Dad. But he was like, do you see me now, Dad? You see me? And I was like, yo, he just dug in on his dad. And clearly his dad wasn't around when he was growing up. And I can attest, there ain't nothing like that feeling when you want your dad's approval so bad and you don't get it. And then finally that looking for his approval turns to bitterness. And then it really becomes your motivation in life. Like you want to prove him wrong. And I can attest, I'm not going to get it. I can attest to it from my stepdad and my dad. So when he said that, I was like, oh, I was rooting for Brandon Moreno, but I'm not upset that this guy won after hearing his life story. And now he's married, got his own kids. And it's just like, man. And nobody has anything bad to say about him. And then the headline of the fight was Alexander Volkanovski and Yair Rodriguez. I don't know if you've seen this guy, Yair Rodriguez. He does these kicks. And he did against Alexander Volkanovski. He could throw these kicks and then his foot like flicks you. He can almost like bitch slap you with his toes. He'll throw the kick and be like, pow! And he's been annihilating people. And that's when you know there's levels to this. Because Volkanovski almost toyed with them the whole fight. Just dominated. And end up knocking him out in the second round. So look at the main card. So it was $80. And it was, sometimes when you spend money on a fight, you're like, dang, that was a waste of money. Man, I felt like I didn't pay enough. So you got a first-round KO, and then you got a decision, but it was such a back-and-forth battle. Then you got a second-round KO, and then you got another back-and-forth battle, and then you got another second-round KO. Oh, round 3. I'm sorry. Volkanovski knocked him out in round 3. But, I mean, just great fights. And then Robbie Lawler, it's his last fight. He's going to the Hall of Fame, and he knocks his guy out in the preliminaries in 38 seconds. I mean, it was a great night of UFC fights. I'll tell you that. Oh, man. That was great. I think it was the best one I ever saw from start to finish. Definitely the best one I ever saw.